Welcome everyone back to the Other Israel Film Festival. My name is Isaac Zablocki. I'm the director of film programs at the Marlene Meyerson JCC Manhattan and of course of the Other Israel Film Festival. Thank you so much for joining us. Shabbat Shalom. Normally on Saturdays at Other Israel, we're showing short films at the auditorium at the JCC to packed houses. I have to admit, I say this every year and it's always true, our short films are some of our best films and they're really treasures. And I think in general, in Israel specifically, I'm seeing that short films offer so much, and sometimes when there's not a budget for a feature, the story can be told even in a better way through a short film, and there's really amazing talent there, and this year's shorts really stand out as far as being some of the best shorts that I've seen. So congratulations to all of our short filmmakers and to all the wonderful films, and I urge you to check them all out. Also, just to give you the rundown for today, we're doing short films. We have sessions here at noon, 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. And then at 6 p.m. we have the feature-length documentary, Till Kingdom Come. These are all the conversations for the films. We will not be showing you films in these sessions. You should watch the sessions. I believe you could even watch the short films in between, in those hour breaks in between each session. So yeah, if you're quick enough and want to spend the day with us, it's raining here in New York. So for those of you who are in New York, that's what you can be doing with your day. And I promise you it is well worth it by far. But of course, join us today and join us throughout the week. Tomorrow we have another full day of programming starting at noon with a live play reading of Asher's Command with Navid Negaban, who's a fabulous actor, and he directed this project. So join us for that conversation, and then throughout the day for many more conversations for all the amazing films that the festival has. And we're here, of course, till Thursday. For today's panel, which I'll introduce in one moment, first of all, questions, as always, can be placed in the chat, and then we'll open up your mic during the Q&A part to allow you to ask your questions live. Honestly, we could spend an hour on each film, but we're combining them together, so we'll make sure that, that all the films are discussed. Of course, we want to keep our conversation respectful, so ask you to keep a respectful tone to all of your questions. Please challenge with your questions, but let's keep them also respectful, as I know our community does really well. This, for me, is really the most important part of this festival, these conversations, and they really elevate the messages of these films. And I'm excited to dive into the themes of all of our films. I want to thank our partners, specifically for this session, all of our partners we always thank, and they're doing amazing work on the ground, but specifically for this session, within the most specific, the film Birthright, I want to thank our partners from Generation R at the JCC, which is our Russian programming at the JCC, and give a shout out to Audrey for their amazing partnership, and thank you for being a part of this. And now it gives me great pleasure, before I introduce the panelists, I want to also take note and mention Yara Kedem and Morgan Magid, who are both members of the team here at the JCC, running film as well, who will also take part in this conversation and ask questions and chime in where they feel most relevant. But now to go to the filmmakers that we have with us. I'll start with Nataliya Olshanskaya. Did I get that right? Close enough. Nataliya, you will recognize her. She is from the film Birthright. Two separate words, Birthright, not Birthright, even though this might resemble some trips that are called Birthright. This one is called Birthright. We have, I'm just going according to my screen, we have Tomer Shushan. Tomer is the director of White Eye, which I hope most of you have seen these films already and know what I mean when I reference each one. Actually, sorry, I'm taking it back a notch. I was going to ask each director as I introduce them, say hi, tell us who they are, where and where they're coming from. So Nataliya, let's start with you, taking it back one step.
Where I come from, right? So I'm originally from Moscow, Russia, and I repatriated in Israel in 2014, which is exactly 6 years ago, basically. And since my repatriation, my aliyah, I've been living in Tel Aviv mostly for the past 6 years. I've been studying filmmaking at the Tel Aviv University, and I've been acting for the past couple of years since I've done this project as an actor. That's pretty much should sum it up a little bit.
Well done. Tomer, tell us about yourself.
Hi, I'm Tomer Shushan, and I'm 33 years old, originally from Tel Aviv. Currently, I'm in Berlin, and I'm the director of the short film White Eye, which is my first independent short film after film school, and yeah, that's it.
Thank you. Then we have Ya'aqov Yamsa. Ya'aqov is the director of Shlomo. Ya'aqov, tell us about yourself.
Hi, so I'm Ya'aqov Yamsa. I'm 32 from Tel Aviv. Director of Shlomo. I studied film in Tel Aviv University, and I'm happy to be here.
And then we have Nitzan Rozen, finally, who is the director of Home Constructors. Nitzan, you're on mute.
Okay, there you go. So hi, everybody. I'm Nitzan. I live in Jaffa. I've studied film in the Sam Spiegel Film School. And Home Constructors is my first short film, my first independent short film after graduating. Very short film.
Thank you. Short and sweet. Great. And I see here also our friend Tzipi Tropa is here from My Dearest Enemy, which was the film that we discussed last night. Be sure to check that one out as well. And Audrey, I see you're here. Folks, feel free to turn on your cameras, be a part of this conversation. We're going to keep it really casual and fun, hopefully. And of course, any questions you can put in the chat, and we'll be happy to open your mic. Let me start with a question for all four filmmakers, I'll say. Tell us a little bit about where this project came from, why you wanted to make this film. Ya'aqov, I'm going to start with you.
Hey, so I made this film. The film is about a young Ethiopian-Israeli who is struggling with his relationship after experiencing post-trauma after police brutality, and I wanted to reflect via the story of Shlomo, my protagonist, the emotional state and the mental state of a lot of young Ethiopians, Israeli, who feel unsafe or that feel that they are trapped in this society. And I wanted this film after like a shooting that took place next to my parents' house, where this police officer just shot a young Ethiopian with no reason, when he could have done a lot of other things in order to deal with this situation. And that's what brought me to tell the story. That's it.
Thank you. A fascinating film, of course, plays on echoes in many levels, especially at this time. Natalya, tell us a little bit about why you wanted to be a part of this film and where it came from what you know. We were supposed to have the director here as well. Unfortunately, she had a last-minute emergency.
Okay, so the film goes back to me originally simply meeting in bar. We've met my first year in Israel. So when we started to develop some sort of friendship, most of the things that I wanted to tell her and that I was talking about were things connected in some way to Taglit, to Aliyah, to all the process of repatriation that I was going through, that a lot of people around me were going through, because I've been studying at the Ulpan. I've been going to the university. I've been surrounded by immigrants, new immigrants specifically, all the time. So after a while, since we've already been friends, I already knew she was a film director, that she was the beginning, but very, in my opinion, talented and inspiring film director. So when she told me that, after talking to me and after realizing about all this huge context of new immigration and some sort of this very special world of new immigrants in Israel. So when she told me that she wants, she considers the idea of writing the script about it, maybe making a short film about it, maybe a feature, and I was on board with her from the first moment, because I was very interested about sharing the stories that I've been witnessing, and my story also. So it goes way back to us meeting. And as an actress, I joined the project later.
And were you yourself on one of these forms of birthright trips?
Excuse me. Yes, I was on a birthright trip in 2002. Yeah, it was a pretty regular birthright trip, nothing unusual.
So very similar to what we saw in the film.
Well, to some extent.
Okay. Tomer, tell us, where did this project come from, and why did you want to make it?
Well, since I can remember myself trying to tell stories and make films, I all the time, even without a purpose, touched the topic of difference between classes or layers of the society. And after film school, I really wanted to make something, some story about it. And in Israel, we can get money, funds to make your films by sending our scripts to film foundations. And it was one of these days, like the deadline to send a script. And I was working on another script, and I was on the way to meet my mentor to finalize the script and to send it. And on the way there, this story actually happened to me. So it's a personal story. And I was so, it was so intense and I was so overwhelmed by this story that just happened without any chance to regret or like to do anything. And I told it to my mentor, and then she told me, let's just write it. And I wrote it in 40 minutes, and then we sent it, and that's how it started about 2 years ago. And yeah, that's it.
Amazing, thank you. Nitzan, same question.
Mine is easy. It was basically shot from my window. Tel Aviv is a city under construction. And I, very much like Tomer, was always it always occurred to me that there's something funny about Tel Aviv is known as the first Hebrew city, which is built by Palestinians, foreigners, not by Hebrew people. And I thought that it was, I thought it's very interesting that the city of culture, the city that is so left-wing, we sometimes call ourselves the state of Tel Aviv, is being built by people that have no rights in it. They have no chance to live inside it. And Memorial Day in Israel is, I refer to it as the Israeli Yom Kippur. It's the most sacred day, the day where we reflect on our actions and we ask ourselves, why do we do what we're doing here? And it's a Jewish day because we don't speak about the fallen of the Palestinian side. It's our day for our soldiers. And I thought that it would be very interesting to see what happens if I put the Palestinian workers in a situation where they're between me and my camera and the new foreigner in town that's escaping another war. So basically I got myself a microcosmos of conflict in my backyard, which is actually my backyard. And I just wanted to see what happens. So I went there with my camera, and I knew the people because they were my neighbors. And then I moved because it was too much noise. That was a joke.
Funny. we know about the noise. We program these together. They're all actually connected on this topic of talking about different minorities within Israeli society, newcomers to Israel. We call this Others in Israel. That's what we called the session. It's a nice thread that I think connects first of all, to what this festival is all about, but also to a big part of what Israeli society is all about. And I think all of your films really bring up these elements within Israeli society, these somewhat niches of small groups that don't fit in perfectly to what Israeli society might think it is in some ways. And it's fascinating to look how all of these films actually play a part, and possibly all these communities together make up some level of a majority, maybe, but right now very much are considered minorities. I want to jump into each film individually a little bit deeper, and I guess I'll start this time. I'll work backwards, and I'll start this time with Nitzan. First of all, Nitzan, I found it brilliant how it's framed. Of course, it's one shot, as I recall, right? And it's just framed. Was this at all, did you have to orchestrate it at all to get people to stand in the right places for the cameras? Is it completely just worked out perfectly like that? Tell us behind the scenes.
Yes and no. Because they were my neighbors, I would visit them on a regular basis. So, well, I'm a film director, which means I'm not working like a normal person. And I spend a lot of time at home. So each time I would go to get something, I would stop by the building and I would talk to them. So we became friends. And it was very natural for me to go in there with a camera. Obviously, I asked for permission. And well, they were suspicious when I asked to film them on Memorial Day. I didn't know, I was more interested in what the Palestinian-Israeli workers would do, because I think that they suffer from, I know that they suffer from a very complicated identity issue, because on the one hand, they are the people of this country. On the other hand, they are not part of this country. And being forced into action the way I didn't tell them what to do. I had no idea whether they're gonna say something. I knew that the new guy, I call him the new guy, won't stand still because he doesn't know this routine of Memorial Day. But I had absolutely no idea how they would react, and I didn't want to direct them, because to me, cinema is somewhat an experiment, and if I know the results, it's not interesting. And I very honestly wanted to see what's going to happen, and I had no clue. And then when they well behaved, I must say that I thought it's a horrible thing, because they wanted to look good in a way they thought I would expect them to behave. They wanted to be good under the Jewish eye, and not only I was this Jewish girl, I was there standing with a camera, and who knows where this is going. So there's a manipulation in the very making of the film, which is another subject that I'm very interested in, that forced them into a situation that was, for me, representative of the situation in Israel. So they're always under the Jewish eye. And I am this eye, so I'm not criticizing them. I'm looking at my position and saying, really? Is this how you want to construct the first Hebrew city?
Do you mind if I...
Oh. Yeah, please.
Hi, everyone. I'm just going to jump in just as part of the festival team. And that's so fascinating for me to hear, Nitzan, because when I saw the film, one of the things that struck me the most is, as a person who grew up in Israel, I know the significance of that moment and of that day, and how much emotion and how much is built into that. And when I saw it, I was like, I was so moved almost to tears by how much respect these workers who don't have any specific connection to this day are showing towards that moment. And you're right, it's like, on one hand, I was wondering, are we showing the same amount or kind of respect towards other important days that are, for the different populations of people that live in Israel, who do not get a day in which they need to stand still and the entire country is paying their respects to them. But on the other hand, I was wondering, yeah, is this something that they might be feeling otherwise towards and are not showing it because they're, well, literally under a territory that might not be respectful for their voice. And I was wondering, did they express any of that? Is that something that you felt or had a conversation with them about before or after shooting that moment?
Not before, because I didn't want to ruin it. I didn't want to control. I love to control my films, but not in this aspect because it's not interesting. I know for sure that it was an awkward moment for everybody. And now I live in Jaffa, which is a mixed city. It's an Arab city that Jews live in. And it's a very big issue, the lost identity and of Palestinians in Israel, Arab Israelis or Palestinian Israelis. The reason I don't look at it as a beautiful act of respect is that I know that there is nothing that the Jewish side is doing for the Palestinian side, recognizing the dead Palestinians as soldiers that died on the way to peace is something unacceptable in Israel. They are the terrorists. We are the fighters. It's a very clear perspective that we have here. And I would love to stand still for soldiers on both sides. I would love to have peace and, no climate change. But until then, I would feel much better if we were able to respect both sides. And then it would have been a beautiful moment because I would have stood still for their dead.
It's fascinating. Let me ask one more question, just as far as one of the fascinating things is also the hierarchy there of the workers. Then you have the African worker who comes in and is like, what is going on here? What is happening? And kind of actually pulls it all together. What does that say to you?
When I shot the film, it was when we had this really, there were a few demonstrations regarding the rights of foreigners that escaped other wars. Specifically, he's from Sudan. And well, to me, it was he was dealing with a whole other issue and he was trapped. And I mean, it's funny. It's a funny mise en scène. It's also funny that they're all standing still and he keeps walking there and he's no clue what's going on. And I think that somehow when looking from a different point of view, things look kind of different. So leaving aside all of those identity issues and political issues that I was trying to deal with, it's a very funny situation. You see an entire country standing still for 2 minutes and it's stupid and funny. It's a slapstick thing. And if I can get some humor into my very political film sometimes, I think I think that adding humor to everything just makes it better. That's my way of dealing with things.
For sure. And I think it was extremely profound and just brilliantly placed. Speaking of this hierarchy, I want to jump into the film Shlomo a little bit. Ya'aqov, for that film, first of all, I can't not start with this element of the police brutality towards the Ethiopian community. Where does that come from in Israel? This is something that I'd say, I don't know how familiar the American audience is with this element within Israeli society, but where does that come from? Why does that fear exist? Isn't this a Jewish country?
Yes, look, it's when there is like a black minority in a very, white society, I think like that, we usually see that let's say the white part of the society looks at blacks as a threat, as something that need to be maybe stopped, maybe neutralized. But that's my day-to-day. It's like a few months ago, I just walked on the street and a police officer stopped me with no reason. He just he asked me a question and I asked him why he stopped me, and he didn't have anything to say because there wasn't any reason but my skin color. And in 2019, after the shooting that I spoke about earlier, I just couldn't be indifferent to it. And there was a lot of protests in Tel Aviv. And so it comes from, being minority. Ethiopian-Israelis are something like 2% of the population in Israel. Okay, so it's very, first of all, it's very easy to find us. Let's say like that. We are very marked in the society. And, that's what I wanted to talk about, just to open this conversation, but with a specific story, with Shlomo's story, and not with the act of police brutality. Okay, only via sound, only through the sound, I'm addressing the police brutality, the post-trauma because of this.
And of course, the irony in it, and something that connects you to Nitzan's film, is once again there's a hierarchy here. There's this hierarchy of okay, so there's the white Jews in Israel, there's black Jews in Israel, and then there's non-Jews in Israel. Especially if you're and don't worry, Natalya, you're next. But then of course there's Black non-Jews in Israel, and where that places it, and that can you talk a little bit about how you use that in the film, which I thought was fascinating.
Yeah, in the story, Shlomo tries to regain his masculinity back. Okay, after he failed to perform with his girlfriend, he's looking for a way to reclaim his masculinity, and when this immigrant, this illegal immigrant, innocent illegal immigrant, comes to the house, and he comes just to take an envelope with money that he left there because he lived there before, like 2 weeks before Sarah. Shlomo tries to attack him, or to take his money first, and then he's trying to attack him, and he's punished for that because he's trying to face the problem with another violence, with more violence, and only when he's hurting his girlfriend, the person he loves, he's he's being vulnerable, and he tells her that he doesn't have anywhere to go. Only then he can change, can fix his life. So this hierarchy was, it was what could I do? Okay, I needed someone to put Shlomo as superior to him, and this immigrant, this black immigrant, was the solution for that.
And of course, I mean, it's like the person gets abused, so he abuses someone else that he can, and there's this terrible cycle there. It's fascinating. I'm also, just the last thing I wanted to point out is one of the fascinating things about this film is that the Ethiopian community is associated often with being a traditional community, and I feel that the film tries to show a less traditional side of Ethiopian society in Israel, which I think is important to bring to the public. This is not something that gets shown on film all the time. Is that something you received pushback for? You're publicizing kind of this a traditional world's non-traditional actions?
Yeah, after the one screening I had, someone, Ethiopian girl, came to me and she said, "Oh my God, we never seen this kind of relationship on screen between Ethiopians. Like they are almost having sex over them, they're kissing and all that. It was an intimacy that we don't see usually at the screen. And yes, I born in Israel, so I didn't take anything from the Jewish tradition, let's say it like that. Okay, and that is the life we live as the second generation here. Is the life that we want. Besides, We are not tradition. We are Chilonim. That's it.
Thank you. Natalia, let me ask you about in Birthright, of course. I think they bring to the surface this whole concept of Russian Jews in Israel, Russian Jews not necessarily being as Jewish, as specifically defined by the government or by communities in different ways. And that's a theme that, of course, plays out throughout the film. Where do you put that in the context of this hierarchy that exists in Israel?
I personally don't like it's a weird thing for me. I laughed earlier because this hierarchy question reminded me something that, oh God forbid I tell a story. The first year that I came to Israel and I was only learning the language, and I went through the whole immigration process from like coming not knowing how to write, and suddenly like I work as a waitress on a beach and speak Hebrew. Ridiculous situation. But I remember the manager at the restaurant where I worked at tried to explain Israeli society to me, and he said the following thing: well, you have to know this thing. First, there are Ashkenazi Jews, then there are Mizrahi Jews, American, French, and then others. Then there are, then there are Russian Jews, then there are Ethiopian Jews, then there are Arabs. And he started talking this thing, he was like making a joke out of it. And it was so hard for me to just like, is this a joke? Is this true? So he was just like kind of the same moment he like put me on the same specific spot, like the Russian Jews, and there are Russians who are not Jewish, and the ones that are higher than the others. And I'm remembering it until this day. It was a weird thing to hear, but that is so true to the way that the society works here. Actually, that like it took me a few years to realize it was not actually a joke that somebody told me at the beach.
Wow.
Yeah.
And one of the interesting things in the film also, because there is one element there in the hierarchical relationship, is it's very funny that I find one of the ironies of the film takes place at the famous Bedouin tents that every Birthright trip goes to. I remember I had been on some Birthright trips, and it fascinated me, this Bedouin tent experience. You go for the Bedouin experience, which, by the way, is completely owned by Israeli Jews. As you see there's a disco ball in the tent, which every Bedouin, of course, has a disco ball in their tent. That's part of the Bedouin experience, is the disco. I'm being ironic, of course, and the part that the workers there play within this whole experience, I feel just lends to the absurd of it. Would you say that the film has a little bit of an absurd tone?
Oh, definitely. And it was very conscious from the very beginning. And actually, we've been working on a script for a while, discussing different points of view, different tones possible for the film. And I think the moment when we got this perspective, hey, this is just like a bunch of Russian people who are brought to the desert, to a Bedouin village, and are told, welcome to your motherland, while Bedouins play their national traditional musical instruments, which was an actual situation in my Taglit, and I'm sure in many, many other Taglit trips. So this was a very specific point in developing the script, which gave this absurdic, ironic tone to the whole story, which we then kept on and decided to make it a general setting of the film.
And it plays well, even into that last shot when the two buses are coming down the bridge together, facing each other, which one can analyze as a symbol of the absurdity of possibly Israeli existence. Tomer, White Eye. A lot to chew on here. We've been talking about all these elements of Israeli society, and I think most of them come up in your film. There's so many different elements. It's such a collage of Israeli society that shows up, possibly the underbelly of Israeli society in some ways, who are all enter this one frame. First of all, I have to start. I actually didn't even remember it. As we were discussing the film today, I suddenly had to go back. I had forgotten that this is all in one shot, the movie, which is absolutely like just first of all for the mise en scène on that. I give a lot of credit. It's such a beautiful film, and it all fits in. And you decided to do it in one shot. Why did you decide to do it in one shot? You don't like editors.
No, it's not the case. Actually, it was very challenging to make it in one shot, and I'm not sure that I'm going to do another film like that after this experience. But the reason was very simple for me, because I remember myself in the real story confronting this guy, and don't have any time for myself to understand that I'm doing something very, very wrong. And I'm talking to a person, and I blame him in things that I don't even have the moment to see if maybe he's right or to hear his side. So what I remembered, that the very, very the most, I don't know, like hard thing that happened there, that I didn't had like time to breathe and to understand. And I thought, how can I make the audience to have the same feeling like the character? And if I would do it with no cuts, the audience won't have time to breathe like the character in the real story. So I thought it's going to be very effective. And that's the main reason to make it in one shot.
And it works. And I also want to say that, you know, sometimes the one shot films, it takes away from it. You feel like, oh, they're trying so hard to keep this all in one shot that you're not actually, you know, seeing the perspective. And it's really framed really well, that I think you both get what you were trying to achieve, and the audience doesn't really lose anything. I think everything really fits in nicely. But getting into the themes of the films, and I'm going to throw this hierarchy element there too. Tell us a little bit about the interplay between these two elements. One of the between these many elements. One of the most fascinating being also specifically like the cops that you throw in there. I mean, obviously there's the African workers, the migrant workers there, but there's also the police, and there's the prostitute, and there's so many others that fit in there. Can you tell us a little bit about the characters that all come in and how they all play that part, and why they needed to be a part in all of this?
So there is this story between this citizen that claim his own bank, and also the African refugee that is also there, claim the same. But I thought, how can I make this word much more deeper, and also to create a background to this society, like a microcosmos of the society that we're living. And I remember that everything just happened. I was lucky that everything happened to me in real life. You know, I didn't need to invent anything. Like, it was two officers that came. One of them was Muslim. One of them was Jewish religious officer. And obviously, I felt that at that moment that the Jewish is the leader, and the Muslim guy is like all the time on the back, just saying like afraid of what the Jewish gonna do to. Like, it was also there. The racism was also between them, and also this prostitute that she's there. She's in the background. She's having the most horrible life, but no one cares. Like, she's just there. No one look at her. She's like a see-through person, and I could feel it while I was there, but I could only process it and like real understand it when I took a step back and had few moments after for myself, and then I needed to write it, and then I understood that all was just there. So I think that makes all this world very, very authentic, because of all of these layers.
Really fascinating. Of course, there's much more here. I want to give an opportunity for our, first of all, I want to let the audience know that we're going to be having a conversation with two of these films, also in Hebrew, because I think there's an Israeli perspective here that's different than one presented necessarily just to the wide public. So Sunday night, we have an event that will be a conversation in Hebrew for Israelis about this. But I want to give an opportunity for some of our audience members to ask some questions. If you have questions, put them in the chat box and we will open them. We will try to open it up for you. We're going to start with a question from Diane Lerner for Tomer from White Eye. Diane, you're on.
Hi. I saw the films yesterday and I really enjoyed all of them, so thank you very much. On White Eye, I had two questions. One was, where did you shoot it? Because that area was just very atmospheric and I was curious where that was. And I wondered if you could explain a little bit the ending with the bike. It looked to me like the bike was destroyed, but I'm just curious what that ending meant. And thank you.
Hi, thank you very much. The bike was cut to half because I feel that it's a symbolic moment that that I could bring myself and my point of view to this story, which I think that no one, the guy that have the bike now, he don't deserve them anymore. That's the main reason why I decided to do it like that. It didn't happen in real life, but when I got my bike back, by the way, it's the same bike that the real story was about, and I felt that I don't belong, that it don't belong me anymore. So that was my way to show it, and. I shot this film in south of Tel Aviv in some industrial area. The main reason I did it there because I wanted to make it in the meat factory. It was all around one image that I knew it's the heart of the film, is when the guy opened the fridge and you see the refugees there. So I actually built the whole movie just around this image. And that's the reason it was there.
We have another question here from Andrea. Andrea, you're on the line.
Hi, yeah, this is for both Ya'aqov and also Tomer. Could each of you please talk about the relationships or attitudes of the Ethiopian Israelis and the African migrants from Eritrea and Sudan? Connections between the two different groups, lack of connections?
I'll tell you the truth. I don't feel that I'm really, I know this topic that much that I can say, because I told this story from my point of view. And I don't think it's fair for me to tell their stories or like their reality, because first, I don't really know, and second, I don't want to say things that I'm maybe going to be wrong about. But I can say that obviously they live in the bottom of the society because what other people and the government make them feel and be. That's what I can say from my side.
Ya'aqov?
I can say that the relationship between Ethiopians, Israelis, and the Sudanese, for example, here in Tel Aviv, are very tense because my parents came from Ethiopia in 1984, and they came to Sudan. And the Sudanese they attacked the Ethiopians that came to the refugees in Sudan until Israel brought them until Israel brought them from Sudan to Israel. So it is very complicated. When I asked my uncle, because I wasn't in Ethiopia or Sudan, I asked my uncle what he thinks about the Sudanese. He was like very aggressive. Okay, he said that he hated them, and he said that they were their enemies, that they were afraid of them when they came to the refugees in Sudan. And that's when we are talking about the Sudanese. When we are talking about the Eritreans, Eritrea was part of Ethiopia until I think the 1990, sorry. So the relationship are also complicated because a lot of Israelis are, in order to be accepted in the Israeli society, they show their they show more hatred toward the Eritrean, which is funny because the Eritrean and the Ethiopian, you know, we are very we are like the same. We are very same people. We look alike. Okay, you cannot until I'll talk. You would not know if I am an Eritrean or Ethiopian. So it's a very complicated situation, and because not a lot of Ethiopians live in Tel Aviv, which is where a lot of Eritrean and Sudanese are living. There are not a lot of clashes between them, but still, I think it's a sad thing that a lot of Ethiopians like treating badly the Eritrean and Sudanese and other immigrants.
Yara, you had a question.
Yes, I'm actually I was discussing this before with Morgan, who's our program associate, so I'm actually gonna let her ask this very interesting question to Nataliya.
Hi. Yeah, so Nataliya, I was wondering, I mean, I'd love to learn a little bit more about how you were constructing the character along the way with the film. Maybe specifically also about like this journey that the character goes on. Do you feel by the end of the film that your character is, I guess, more connected to Israel or her Jewishness or something? Because you see in the film that she maybe is not seen as like being quote unquote Jewish enough for this experience, and she might not. She's, you know, part of that is also just the other two girls you see in the film seem very confident about being Jewish and making Aliyah and like what their place will be when they come to Israel. And like, I know that's something that like I experienced when I went for the first time also, of like, there are people that just seemed more knowledgeable and confident about what this whole process was like. So I'd love for you to talk about how your character dealt with that within the film.
Well, I wouldn't say that my character became more connected to her potential Jewishness or to Israel at all. This is not how I played her or how I wrote her. On the contrary, I would say she would feel like, for me, the last scenes of the film, the character who feels more lost than she was before the beginning of the trip. And in a way, she's actually pretty clueless about everything Jewish that's in her or that surrounds her. And this is in a way story of a very clueless character who gives other powers to like narrate her story, which is in a way it is what happens to many other clueless people, in my opinion, who go into this like journey of discovering Israel as a new homeland, when they in fact have very little, if any, connections to Judaism, depending on the person, of course. And as for how I worked on the character, well, I started to write the character the same way as we wrote other characters. It was gradually developing through screenwriting. We've been writing the short film for more than 2 years, actually, and changed a lot of forms. The characters changed a lot. And for me, it was all the process of just like combining, like deconstructing and combining all the stories that I seen and witnessed, starting from Taglit, and then I've met a lot of people on my way. When I already came in Israel, I've been still surrounded by many Russian new immigrants. So it's really like it's a patchwork of stories that are all like glued onto the character that's like in search for herself. Very, in my opinion, normal story for someone in her 20s.
And I'll throw in there, Morgan, I felt that the her being sunburnt at the end, I grew up in Israel, a very pale person, and said, wow, we shouldn't be in this Middle East, in the Middle East. This is not where Europeans were necessarily meant to be. And Northern European.
I'm 10 now. If you don't, like, I am very 10 right now. It's a 10 that got like on me through years living in Israel.
I've lost it, thankfully, but it's not good for your skin. But it kind of symbolized a little bit for me her not fitting in this place.
Yeah, it was a nice touch, actually. Dramaturgy-wise, it was a nice touch.
We have time for one more question, and I hear that that the person's microphone is not working. Looking back to the question, but my real question, I think this captures it a little bit. First of all, I want to hear from each of you about the casting process, and also where what you're working on next. So let's start with Tomer.
Hi. So my casting was interesting when I tried to find the character of Yunas. I really wanted to be a non-actor and a real refugee that can understand the pain and the fact that he's not illegal where he's living. It's something that I thought was supposed to be must in this character. And I just interviewed few people, but one night I just saw Dawit, the main, the actor. He was cleaning dishes in some hamburger restaurant in 3 a.m. And I just came to the window and asked him if he wants to meet me and if he's interested to making films. And he was so shocked and didn't understand what I'm talking about. And he was also a bit afraid because he thought that I'm like one of, I don't know, from the authority or something like that. And but he eventually agreed to meet me. And this guy, I mean, he told me his story, and when he understood what this film about, he wanted to do it so much just because he felt that for him it's also really good to do this part because he really believed in it, because the character have really a moment that everyone is in quiet and listen to her story. And I think that no one cares about their stories. And that's something that he really wanted to do. And he also learned Hebrew for this. And we worked for 7 months. It was very great for me to meet him personally and also professionally. And my next project is I'm trying to develop White Eye to a feature film.
Amazing. We look forward to seeing it. Nitzan, I'm putting you up next.
Well, no casting for me, but great neighbors. Sometimes you just have to be lucky. Regarding future projects, so right there is my feature film that's in development. And after Home Constructors, I already directed another short, which is fiction. But then we had COVID-19, and it's right there on the shelf, waiting. So hopefully this summer it'll be out, and hopefully you guys will get to see it, the new short, and inshallah, the feature film will be next.
Cool. Natalia, we know a little bit about how you casted, but if there were any other casting elements for this and what you're working on.
Well, the casting was very interesting. Actually, it took place during a few months in Tel Aviv. We had a little bit of challenge of finding actors for girls who would play Russian-speaking, girls who would speak Russian without Israeli accent, because we were casting in Israel, not in Russia, but we needed somebody who was on the Glee trip, who's never lived in Israel before, but therefore wouldn't have an Israel accent. That was a challenge because we have a lot of great young and all ages actually Russian actors in Israel, because we have a lot of Russian-speaking Jewish people here. But yeah, the casting was very interesting. The two main actors, me and Roman, who played the soldier that Natasha ended up with, we were considered non-actors, and the other actors were all professional actors, actually, cast very carefully by Inbar. I don't have any interesting projects coming up, actually, so I'll just say that Inbar is working the Birthright into a feature right now, and it's gonna be a feature, I'm pretty sure 100%. She just got accepted to a Cine Fondation residence in Cannes. It's gonna write it there, surrounded by mentors and croissants.
Cool. Ya'aqov.
So it wasn't easy at all. Casting, a lot of Ethiopian actors that we approached had trouble with, had a problem with the intimacy of the scene, okay, in the movie. So it was quite difficult to find Shlomo. Sarah, who played by Menver, she is an actress. She studied in Tel Aviv University theater, and the Arbab, who played the immigrant, it was like the most difficult thing I've ever did in my life to find him, because I couldn't, I didn't know what to look for. I approached a lot of organizations dealing with immigrants, and eventually, I don't even remember how, friend to a friend of a friend of a friend, we found the actor, and we did it. And for the other question, I'm distributing right now, me and my producer, Iris Ben Moshe, we are distributing a 20-minute short film. It's called Happy Birthday Water. And we are like waiting for a message from some festivals in the world. So that's what we're doing right now.
Wonderful. I want to thank you all for amazing films and for being here with us today and for sharing this with our community. Speaking of community, this is our opportunity also for the community we're so isolated, to talk to one another and to continue this conversation. And we're going to do breakout sessions in a second. I first want to mention that at 2 p.m. we have the Sam Spiegel Film School shorts here, 3 films from the Sam Spiegel School that I think turned 30 this year. And then at 4 p.m. we have the shorts session that we're calling Encounters with Cinema Rex, So Far So Good, and The Present. Don't miss those. And of course, Till Kingdom Come at 6 p.m. the conversation. Tomorrow at noon, the play reading of Asher's Command. And then at 2 p.m. Golda and the Prophet, we have a conversation around that. 4 p.m. Kings of Capitol Hill, and then of course at 6 p.m. we have the Hebrew conversation with the films White Eye, Home Constructors, and Image of Victory. From hear about these films from a whole nother perspective in Hebrew. So I'll let everybody reconnect. Take a moment. Hope you got to know some of your neighbors and meet some people and have some one-on-one time with one another. Make some new friends this way. It's just turning into a dating site too. We hear we've made some couples, very inappropriate couples. Thank you so much. I want to thank the filmmakers once again for being a part and for sharing and for these amazing films. We look forward to bringing your films together again. Folks, please tell people about these films because, these short films just do not get enough attention. and we'll be sharing them all day here. So please join us for more. Thank you, and we'll see you later.